Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second Friday of our lecture series in celebration of the 34th founding anniversary of the Society of Filipino Archivists. To formally begin our session, may I invite everyone to join to the prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather today. As we prepare to start our session, may your love be our foundation, your grace be our guide, and your hope be our compass throughout this activity. Bless our speakers who will share their knowledge and expertise today. We pray that you guide us throughout the entire session and grow wisdom and knowledge not only in our minds, but also in our hearts. This we ask in the most holy name of Jesus, our Lord. Amen. Saint Jude Tadeus, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Once again, welcome to the second day of our lecture series. Before I proceed to our session proper, may I introduce myself? I am Kristen Fernando Ileto, a licensed librarian and the Secretary of the Society of Filipino Archivists, and I will be your virtual host for today. To give a smooth flow and avoid interruption in our session, here are some few reminders. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. A Slido link will be pinned on the comment section where you can type and send your question, which will be gathered by our tech partners. Alternatively, you can also go to slido.com and enter the code 1323717. In case you encounter internet interruption, just refresh your device and access our Facebook page again to continue with the session. This webinar is free, but if you wish to secure a copy of Certificate of Participation, just scan the QR code included in our FB posting and complete the form. And without further ado, allow me to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Francis M. Navarro is a graduate of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, where he took his Bachelor's of Arts degree in History. He pursued his higher studies at the Universidad de Salamanca as a scholar of the Spanish government, where he took his doctorate in archival studies and documentation. Aside from being assistant professor of history at the Ateneo de Manila University, he is also the director of the university archives. He gives classes at the Loyola School of Theology, the School of Library Information Studies at UP Diliman, and the Center for Conservation of Cultural Property and Environment at the University of Santo Tomas. In 2018, he was awarded by San Beda College, where he finished his elementary and high school education as the most outstanding Vedan in the field of arts and culture. He was part of the government commission to study and investigate the first Easter Mass celebration in the Philippines, celebrated in 1521. His areas of specialization and research includes Philippine colonial history, colonial and modern Southeast Asia, Hispanic studies, Latin America, paleography, and heritage conservation. Dr. Navarro is currently serving as the Vice President of the Society of Filipino Archivists and as President of the Philippine Historical Association. Let us all welcome Dr. Francis Navarro.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. And I would like to apologize profusely for my delay or my tardiness in appearing for this talk. And for unforeseen circumstances, I allowed myself to be delayed, and I could have prevented that. And so I apologize for this, but I thank God uh, that um, that I'm here, and I'm very happy that I'm able to join all of you today. Well, as mentioned earlier, I am currently the archivist of the Ateneo University Archives, and my talk for today is entitled Deciphering the Past: An Introduction to Paleography. Well, I've been asked to give this talk several times already, but every time I present it, I'm thankful that my audience rather are able to appreciate it, especially for those going into research in the archives, as my topic is an introduction to paleography, a field that many people are unaware of its existence, or if not, they may be thinking that it's a difficult subject to study, but for more than 20 years now or so, okay, especially when after finishing my degree in archival management, I fell in love with this particular field. And ever since then, I've been talking about this and sharing my experience and my training, with people from working the archives and libraries in many parts of the Philippines. So my talk is entitled the Deciphering the Past: An Introduction to Paleography. Okay, let's go to our first slide. Okay, well, if you look at this photograph, you will see a group of students actually silently working and trying to figure out maybe what they're doing, okay? And this is a photograph from the archives of Gettysburg College. They are looking into old letters, okay? And they are trying to transcribe them. So answering this question, you will see that they're all trying to figure out what they are reading. Now, luckily for them, okay, they may be, if many of them are looking into documents written in English, then it would be easier for them. But what if the documents are written in a different language, in another language, okay, which will entail more skills on your part as a student of history, looking into the primary sources and trying to figure out, okay, what the letters are saying. And basically, this is where the field of paleography would be coming in. And that is trying to figure out how to understand the handwriting of these people, okay, from a previous time, from a previous century, okay, from centuries back, or we don't know what particular time. So they are trying to figure out what they are trying to read. Now, this is where paleography comes in. And if we are to understand what is the meaning of paleography, it simply is the study of ancient handwriting. Okay? And what are its basic objects? First, to read ancient texts with accuracy. And of course, as students of history, we deal, for example, with documents. As much as possible, we have to be what? Accurate. Well, in this part, I would like to include a motto that I always carry with me, and that is the idea of festina lente. festina lente, meaning make haste slowly. And a very good motto for us archivists, our students of history, trying to figure out documents with accuracy, but we are also very cautious about what we're trying to transcribe or to translate. And this is something that we, as students of the archives and of history, should be able to learn, that we are trying to figure out this handwriting and trying to be accurate as much as possible. So we read ancient texts with accuracy. Secondly, we try to date and localize their handwriting. As such, it is a major component of two other more complex disciplines. That is what we call the study of diplomacy, which studies all aspects of documents and records, and paleography, which is in the wider sense, which studies all aspects of books produced by hand. So we are trying to read manuscripts and documents that were written by hand. Okay? And so to continue, it is simply the study, if you look at the history of the word, okay, so it comes from the Greek word paleo, meaning ancient, and writing, graphos. So the study of writing, therefore, it refers to the study of ancient and medieval handwriting. And we use sources for this. And what are our sources? Any surviving document that could be found in any paper, whether it's papyrus or from parchment or from even from a bark of a tree. And so as for us to be able to decipher what is written, at the same time give it a particular period in history so that we could be able to place it, okay, and identify it. Okay. Now, moving on. Well, when we speak of paleographers, and this is one of my favorite actually pictures or portraits. And when I look at photographs of scribes in monasteries, okay, and of course during that time there was no such thing as a typewriter, there was no laptop, and of course everything was done by hand, okay, and uh, these are people copying from books, copying from manuscripts, and then trying to make copies as much as possible, as many copies as they can, so that it will be the knowledge that they discover from this, from transcribing, will be able to spread, or they will be able to actually pass it on. So when we look at the field of paleography, it studies various handwritings in different stages. Okay. And when I say different stages, we are looking into the history of writing itself, how ancient man began to start writing, began to record, and as the centuries moved on, how languages were transformed into writing. And so this would add up to more work to be done by paleographers, because now they are not simply trying to understand handwriting, but also trying to transcribe it from a different language. Okay. Next is that they try to understand handwriting by looking at the techniques applied in writing in different eras. So what would be this particular standard of writing, for example, during the 13th century? How would an A be in the 14th century? How the letter A would be in the 15th, and so on and so forth, until we got what we have now as the letter A. Then the same thing with the other members of the alphabet. Okay. Another one is, okay, we are looking also of how the production of information would move on. Okay, so we look at them as like written evidences, okay, of man's journey through time. And at the end, what will be the products of this process? So at the end, there will be more information, there will be a more understanding of the past, and at the same time, man will be able to what? To pass on information from one period to the other. Okay. Now, even if we live in the 20, even if we live in this century where practically all modern things now are available to us, even AI now can actually write something for you, okay? Well, it is still something different when you're trying to look at ancient materials, okay? So, okay, the next slide, okay, uh, there, okay. So, a paleographer aims to read documents to be able to assign them a historical date and a place of origin. In order to do this, okay, there are certain skills that we must have. Okay. One is to have a good knowledge of the language in which the document is written. Okay. Well, I always tell my students in history that if they are to do archival work, they would have to go to the archives. And if they would like to know more about the history of our country, then they would have to go into the Spanish documents. Okay. So in the National Archives, there is what you call the SDS, the Spanish Document Services. And there are 13 million of these documents recorded, cataloged at the National Archives, the Philippine National Archives. And unfortunately, not all of them are what? Are are known to students of history, to anthropologists, to social scientists. Why? Because it is unfortunate that not many people understands or read Spanish. Okay? And so a skill needed here is simply, okay, if you are to study history, then you should be ready to understand the language in which these documents were written. Okay. In our history, of course, we will have Spanish and English. Okay. That is why the tendency is for many people to go into the period during the American time. Why? Because the documents would be written in English, and people are afraid to go much lower because of the Spanish language. Second is a paleographer must be familiar with the writing materials used during the chronological period under study. And what do I mean by this? Okay, so we look at the paper, what kind of paper was used, was it, what kind of writing material was also used? Was it ink? From what material did the ink come from? Okay, and as you will see later on, okay, at the time when the roller pen or ball pen has not yet been invented, everyone was using a pen, dip it in ink, and then from there they write. And how does this ink last? Of course, in order to understand this, you would have to be a chemist in some ways for you to understand what would be the component of this ink that makes it last longer so that it will last for centuries and centuries. Okay. Another work that the paleographer must do is to identify the different handwriting styles. Okay. You know, there are various handwriting styles depending on the period. The Italians had their own writing style. The Germans had their own writing style. The same with the Spanish, for example. The same as any country in Europe that would be able to present a very rich history, okay, with big collection of materials in their archives, you will discover that, wow, the handwriting in this particular country would be different from another country, and also depending on the period. Now, there are things that also could be stumbling blocks when you read through these documents, and that is abbreviations. And this is how would I say, a Waterloo for many paleographers, the same with me, because there was no standard abbreviation used throughout the world. Okay, Spanish would have its own form of abbreviating its words, the same with Italian, the same with Latin, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is something that paleographers must look into. That is why if you look at the picture beside it, you will see, okay, the person looking through this document, trying to figure out what the words are saying there. Okay, so he has to figure out the writing style, okay? And this would take time. That is why, as I will mention later, aside from having a skill in understanding the writing, at the same time, the language use, one very important skill rather, or character that a paleographer must develop, and that would be patience, okay? Because you have to be very patient in this particular field. And if you're lucky, you can actually you can actually uh, find out who would be the scribe. Well, of course, this is a detective work for many historians and paleographers because, I mean, if you look at ancient history, looking at the 12th to the 14th century or even to the 15th, you will see that not everyone was able to write. Okay? Not everyone, okay? They had to go to specific scribes to ask them to write for them. So these scribes later on would find their field very what? Um, very much, what you call that, in demand because they would be paid to write, okay? And so there are specific examples of materials that would be written only by specific personalities, okay? Whether they were doctors or poets or simply writers, there were not so many of them. Now, moving forward, uh, so you understand now what we do. Okay, we learn, understand new languages or new dialects. Okay, well, I'm not telling you to master several languages, but in our case in the Philippines, Spanish would be a very, very important language for us, aside from English, okay? Okay, I mentioned earlier, writing styles, okay? As I added here, even when a language retains the same alphabet, the letter shapes evolve, okay? And I will show you what I mean by that. How, how the letters would evolve through time. And again, to emphasize, we are looking also at archaic abbreviations because various writers will be using complex systems of abbreviations, okay, or ligatures. And this is a term that you will find in paleography. That is when letters are joined together. They are varied, but they belong to a particular period and time, okay, for that matter. So as paleographers, we have a great responsibility, okay? Because we are doing work that not many people are able to do, but at the same time, the fruit of this work is more information and more knowledge, okay? So as as we look forward to our discussions, okay, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. For example, as we understand, as we learn languages, okay, this is a very example. I hope you can see it, but I will show you another slide with a much better view. You will see, for example, the various letters of our alphabet changing through time, okay? This is an example of another script that or handwriting style that we have used, especially in the Philippines. You will find this particular writing style even in our own archives, okay? How the A, the B, the C's would be written in various forms, okay, various shapes, but still the script would still be the same, okay? And I will show you in the other slides what are these other scripts that we will be having, okay? Thank you. Okay, so to start again, to understand more about what we are studying in paleography, okay, these are terms that we'll be using a lot. For example, a manuscript. Most of the materials that we will be looking into are manuscripts. And a manuscript is a book a document or a piece, even of a piece of music, because this is the word used by music writers, not a manuscript. But of course, what is important is that these manuscripts are written by hand. We are looking into a period before printing was even started. And even when the printer, with the printing machine was already introduced, people were still writing because not everyone could afford a printing press. So people were still writing. Okay, so the paper, the ink, the quill, or the pen would still be a very important component of any of every table. For example, in Europe or elsewhere in China or in Japan, the ink bottle, the paper, and the pen would always be present. Okay, next slide, please. So we are very familiar with this particular writing style, and we call this the cursive. Okay, when the cursive was introduced, okay, and we are looking at the period around the 17th towards the 18th centuries, when people started combining letters uh, 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 together, in one curve of the hand, for example, okay, it became a very stylish mode of writing. Okay, so a cursive is a descriptor applied to a text where individual characters in a word are joined together. Now, this particular document that I have in front of you is written in English. Okay, but of course, the scribe or the writer would have his or her own style. Okay, and you could actually look, well, I say this is an easy one for many paleographers, especially English paleographers, because the words are well written. You can see the F, the O, the R, the S, the I, the X, the M, the I, the N, the S, the P, the Y, the E, and S, O, F, A, N, okay? I mean, it's easier, okay? Now, let's move on to another slide, okay? Now, what if in the previous slide, you saw the cursive using whole words? There were no abbreviations. But what if you are suddenly faced with a document with so many abbreviations? Okay. And what is an abbreviation? It is a shortening of a word, either by suspension or contraction of letters. Now, this is where the fun begins because there is no single rule on abbreviating a language. For example, English would have its own rules, Spanish would have its own rules, and etc., etc. Now, how can we understand this then? Of course, it is a matter of continuous practice and understanding and continuous what you call that viewing of documents such as this that will make you used to it. Okay. Now, when I say abbreviations, okay, abbreviations were done simply because if for those of you maybe you've studied stenography, okay, which is not being studied nowadays, okay, when we were studying it, uh, uh, I was surprised that there were people who understood what stenography was, And in this particular case, if you are presented with a document like this with various abbreviations, it will take time for you to actually decipher it. That is why always remember that as I mentioned earlier, always remember that patience is a major skill of paleographers. And it takes continuous practice and understanding and studying of handwriting like this or abbreviations like this that will make you used to seeing this, and maybe later on you'll be able to simply identify them immediately. simply by looking at them. Okay. Now, going to the next slide. Okay, okay, can we move to the next slide, please? Okay. Now, a word in paleography that we will also encounter is the word suspension. What is suspension? Okay, it is the omission of letters from the end of a word, which is very common in Latin. Okay, I always see this in Latin. Well, since in the Philippines, many of our documents were also written in Latin, then you will be able to see this. That's why in our case in the Philippines, it is important to understand Spanish, but also be able to understand Latin. Well, they're not too far from each other. Remember, Spanish is a member of the Latin languages or the Romance languages, okay? And it has its roots in Latin, okay? But here, for example, maybe for those of you who are very interested in Roman history, you will always see this word IMP. Okay, this is written in practically everywhere in Rome or even in the Latin documents, which simply means imperator. Okay, imperator. Now, as these things develop, you will also see the development of punctuation marks in the documents. This is how we would start having a punctuation marks being used in these documents. So if for the Latin, whenever they would suspend a word, they would always put a period at the end. And so the word period would simply be an end. Okay. So here, for example, Cesar, or in English we say Caesar, Cesare, okay? So everyone would see the word CAES with the period, with an N, would understand already that it simply means emperador or Cesare. Okay. Now, another term in paleography, okay, next one, please, would be a contraction. Okay. Now, if we have suspension, where you have the end of the word being removed, here in contraction, you have the middle part being removed. Okay. Uh, Now, I'm sorry it cannot be seen, but this is the best I could show you what a contraction is. It's not actually very common. Sometimes I think that when people contract words, they're just too lazy maybe to use that letter because it saves them from moving their hand to form a word, no? And here, the word that, you will see the letter T, but the H would be missing. But the letter A and the letter T would be there. But if you are to read it without an H, we simply say tat. But actually, as understood during the time, it is the word that. Okay. There are other words that would follow this particular rule. But as I've said before, this is not so common. You will see a lot of words that are suspended more than words that are contracted because there will be more abbreviations than words that are contracted, especially in the old documents. Okay. Next one, please. Okay. A tilde. Okay. A tilde is simply an accent. Okay. A tilde is an accent. So here actually you will see how symbols like this would develop through time. Well, in Spanish and in Latin and in French, especially in Portuguese, the tilde or the accent is commonly used, okay, because it tells you about where you should emphasize in saying the word, okay. But in this case, the tilde was used to indicate the omission of letters from a word, okay, letters, okay. So there would be various forms of tilde's accent, okay. So again, later on, it will be adopted also in the English language when it comes to punctuation marks, because the tilde commonly is used now for simply emphasizing where you have the accent, but before it is where letters had been omitted or removed, and you would have to actually like it's like uh, trying to figure out what is the letter, what is the word itself, okay? What is it trying to say? This is very common in European languages. In English, well, very, very, very rare, okay? Unless there are French words adopted into the English language, but practically it is very rare in the English language. But if you are to study Spanish and Latin and Portuguese, you will see this. You will see this a lot, okay? And this is where you will now have uh, the the various quotations, punctuation marks actually coming from these particular symbols. Okay, next one, please. Okay. Now, moving back a little bit now, let's look at what, okay, and this is what I usually teach my students about. When they look at the Spanish document, many of them would suddenly like try to figure out what it's trying to say. No, a paleographer would look at the document first and look at the document as a general whole. He will look at the top part, the lower part, the middle part, the left and the right. He will try to look at what would be written on this piece of paper. Now, if you are to go to the Philippine National Archives and look at documents, Spanish documents, you will see that especially official documents, not like official documents, they would have a standard format. A Spanish document would usually have a protocolo or an introduction, or what they would call an invocation, meaning informing the reader or the receiver of the document from where the document came from. Okay. Next one is the body or the cuerpo. Okay, you will see there, no, the main body of the letter. Okay, where you have all the information. But another important thing that paleographers should look at, if in order for them to look at the provenance of the document, is to look at the seal. Okay, to look at the seal. Now, it's quite interesting to look at documents in the archives, and I would actually just look at them and look at the signatures of people. And, we have some letters in the archives directly signed by the king. Okay, not many, but there are. Okay? There are. And they do not sign by their name. They will simply sign Yo el Rey, I the king. That's it, no name. Okay. So how will you be able to understand or to know who is that king that this signature is referring to? And that is where you will see the seal, and the seal will actually tell you, okay, from where or from whom it came from. Okay. Now, one other part that I was not able to include here is what we call the colophon. The colophones are notes written on the sides of the document. Okay, notes. Now, colophones are usually written by people who have read the letter before filing it. So they leave notes on the sides. And when they pass on the letter to another one, the person receiving it would also write his notes. These are notes written around the letter, and they are also very, very useful because sometimes these small notes written around the document, written in, if you're able to decipher them, some of them are contracted, some of them are simple, like codes that maybe that you will think if you do not understand the writing, and they are simply actually notes written by those who have read the letter. That is why at the end, no, one I will refer a particular message, a particular exhortation from a well-known paleographer in Mexico. She would say that look around the document, see what is written around it, because not everything is written on the body. Sometimes you will find answers around the document. Well, you will have to do like a inspector bureau, no, like trying to figure out what the document is trying to say. Okay, thank you. Now, moving on. Uh, so with all these documents that I've been mentioning to you, okay, let's look at what are the common problems now faced by researchers in the Philippines, especially if they go and look at the documents. Well, number one is a reading knowledge of Spanish, okay, a reading knowledge. I've always emphasized that if you are to go to the archives, you have to know Spanish. Well, the late Father Arcilia would always joke that whenever he would meet historians, he would say, do you know Spanish? If the student says no, he would say, well, you're in the wrong course then, okay? Well, of course, that is on the extreme side. But again, if you are seriously planning to enter into the archives here in the Philippines and do research, then you have to know at least to have a reading knowledge of Spanish. Second is be familiar with familiar abbreviations. Okay, because Spanish and Latin abbreviations are quite archaic, okay? And there are a lot of them in the documents. Okay. If you are to see my office, okay, you will see things hanging on the sides of my wall showing tables of handwriting styles throughout the period, especially alphabet styles, because, okay, even though I've been doing this for many years, I still have to look at my cheat sheet to understand what it's for me to know, okay, because I cannot remember everything, okay, so I have to look at these symbols around me, okay. Now, of course, if you do not know this particular language, okay, and if you're trying to transcribe it, you will have a hard time translating it, okay? So, from the original text, okay? And of course, what if you are faced with documents that are also deteriorating? You're already having a hard time trying to figure it out, and now you have a document that is deteriorating with what? With with the information missing from the document itself. Okay, so well, of course, this is something that we face practically every day if we are working in the archives. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one, please. Now, I want to use an example of the first book ever written in the Philippines. Okay, the Doctrina Christiana, made in 1593 by Father Fray Juan de Plasencia. Well, this is a manuscript in book form, but printed, not handwritten, okay? And you will see already on the cover, okay, the writing style that was particularly used here. It's not cursive because you have the letters separated, not connected, okay? Actually, what was used here was more of the Germanic, no, as I will show you later on, okay, with large letters, okay? So moving on to the next page, please. Okay, next slide, okay. Now, luckily, in the Philippines, well, by 1593, you have a printing machine already established in Manila. And maybe some of you are familiar with the famous printer, not Tomas Pinpin. Okay, he printed a lot of books here. And in this particular material that you have in front of you, printed, of course, you will have the ancient handwriting of the Filipinos and the Latinized form of this writing, as you will see on the other side. And this is a prayer, okay? The Ama Namin or the Our Father, okay? Now, again, if you look at it, the Latinized words here, it's easy to read because the print used here are large, okay, clearer, and you can actually even without actually having if you, even for example you do not know Filipino, you will be able to transcribe this. Okay, as you see, it's very clear. Okay, and then you will see the following pages. Thank you. The following slides. Okay, another one. This is much clearer. The Hail Mary, the Abagi Noong Maria. Okay, you will see again the letters with the tildes, the accents. Okay, now being used differently. Okay, and then of course on the other side you will see the way the Spaniards taught us how to read and to write. Okay, by teaching us the vowels and okay how to pronounce these words. Okay, so if you look at the history of the book, it's actually a catechetical book that is also used for the study of to teach the people how to read and write in the modern way for that particular period. Okay. But again, I like this because if everyone was to write like this, it would be easy actually to write it down because the letters are very clear now. Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next one, please. Okay. Now, a very good example of a document that was written during the Spanish period, but again, showing you the old Baybayin and the Spanish writing all in one document. Okay, this is a well-preserved document at the UST archives. Okay, we are very much lucky to have to be able to see this even up to now. Okay, though it was damaged, it is conserved at the UST archives. Okay, but you will see, well, the writing style. Okay, 1629. Okay, somewhat cursive already, but still the letters are clear. Okay. Sooner or later, because there's a particular writing style known as the cortesana or the ones used in court. And of course, that is a particular style because you will see here the letters like flying around already with long tails. Okay. And this is a different form of writing that was commonly used in the courts. Okay. But at least the Baybayin is very clear. Unless you understand Baybayin, you'll be able to understand what is actually written on these documents. But in general, actually, this is a contract. This is a contract for a land purchase uh, bought by a Spanish from the Filipinos, assigned also in the middle document by the landowners. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay. Now, giving my footnote on by buying, of course, this is also part of paleography, but this is what we call our part of Philippine paleography, okay, because it's only written in the Philippines, okay, and baybayin now is becoming very popular, okay. If many of our, if for example, our documents were written in this language, stood side by side with Spanish, okay, maybe baybayin would still be a writing style and a writing style used by us even in this particular century. We would not have lost it. Okay? It would have stood time together with Spanish and English throughout history, but this is part of our own paleography, okay? Our Philippine paleography. Okay, thank you. Okay. Now, I'll be showing a series of documents that I've collected from the Philippine National Archives through my studies there. Okay, again, I want you to look at the handwriting styles. By now, you'll be able to understand what I mean by handwriting styles, letters changing, letters becoming clearer, some archaic, some abbreviated, okay? But here you will see the letters very clearly written. Okay, so Pueblo de Cabugao, okay, año de 1885, okay, Cabeceria, okay, Bacante, okay, so these are the words written here, and these are names of people that had paid their taxes, okay, but it gives you an idea of how good the scribe was in being able to what? to write clearly, such as this. Okay, the next slide, please. Now, this is, okay, I mean the previous one, I'm sorry, previous one. Yes, there's this one. Okay, this is written in the writing called Cortesana, which was very popular in the 16th and the 17th centuries because it was popularized by the French court, and whatever came from France was copied everywhere. Okay, even though the Spanish do not like the French, the Spanish copied the way the French wrote and the style and followed their style. Okay, but again, you will find documents such as this in our archives. Again, it's not a difficult document to read, but again, it would help you more to understand how various letters were written through the centuries and how these styles would change and we adopted also in various countries. Okay. Next slide, please. Now, what earlier I mentioned about documents that are deteriorating or have deteriorated. Now, this is a map, but this map shows you written items on it. Okay. So what if you are faced with a document such as this with the missing part in the middle? And that is the most important part. Okay. Of course, you all know already why this part is like this. It's simply because this space is what this document has been folded through throughout time. Okay. And because it has been folded like this for a long time, it has been okay. It needs to be conserved, needs to be repaired, okay, so that at least we'll be able to save it from totally deteriorating. So again, what if you are missing information? Then what a paleographer would do is try to understand what would be understandable here, what could be seen. And then the middle part, it might take time for the paleographer to understand what would be missing here, but at least it would give him an idea already, more or less, if he does further research later on, of what were these missing parts, okay, through proper research. Then next one, please. Okay. Now, in the Philippines, there are various places where you can actually find very good archival materials. A good place to practice your knowledge of paleography or to start your road towards studying paleography by going to the Philippine National Archives in Manila. If you also go to UST, where you have the Dominican Archives at the University of Santo Tomas, okay? And also their other convent in San Juan. Okay, these are two of my favorite places to find well-conserved documents, okay? Because they have the means to conserve them. Okay, so they were able to conserve these documents through throughout these centuries of their presence in the Philippines. You also have the Ayala Museum and Library at Makati. And let me add also the Filipiniana Library here at the Ateneo de Manila University and also at UP. Okay, there are so many materials there that you can actually check. Paleography actually can be used on any document. Of course, the main part of it is understanding the history of writing from the time writing was invented and until the 18th centuries. But even up to now, okay, where people still write, okay, you will still need paleography because not everyone would be writing so well and so clearly that you will be able to understand them immediately. So paleography is still needed even at this particular period in our history. And then you also have the Lopez Library and Museum at San Juan now, and the Ortigas Library, not in Pasig anymore. I should have changed it. They're now located in San Juan also, in Green Hills. So these are very good places where you can actually cull through well-preserved documents. Okay. Now, thank you. They Just to give you a brief account of the various writing styles. Okay, first, the next document, please. Sorry. Various writing styles throughout I'm giving you examples of the writing styles that I've discovered in our archive. So we've been talking about writing styles. So we have here Italica. Okay, you will encounter this in any archive here in the Philippines. Okay, so it's not cursive, but you will see the words are at least grouped together. Okay, but you still have to understand what the shapes of these letters would mean. Okay, next one is the redonda. Okay, very as with the word redonda meaning round, redonda. Okay, so you have the letters practically bold. Okay, and bold letters. Okay, practically from the words of redonda, roundish. Okay, but if you look at this, well, this is a writing style, but again, since the letters are so big, the spacing here is an issue in writing styles like this spacing. So you would have to understand the word like here as obispo, obispo, o obispo, okay, otro, okay, prelado, okay, de Santa Iglesia. Again, you will see letters here that that shows you that some of the words had been adopted from a different country, from another country, like arzobispo, because the word now for arzobispo is spelled with the letter Z or the Z, but before it was spelled with the cedille, like the French C. Okay, as you see there, the letter C with the tilde at the bottom. Okay, so this is the redonda style, and this is very common in many of our documents in the archives. The next one is the cortesana. Well, I mentioned this earlier. Okay, smooth flowing of letters, a mixture of movements of letters with tails. Okay, very popular in the French court. Again, popularizing it that it was adopted by its neighbors, especially Portugal and in Spanish. Okay, and I mean, when you look at this, you will see letters that might confuse you with a different letter, but actually, like for example, if you go to the second line, okay, at the third word from the last, okay, mi fayo, mi moi, it's actually it's written like a Y, but actually it's an I because the tail goes all around it. Okay. Well, when I ask this, because I always say it's me, but later on it was a letter I, as my teacher said. I said, okay, very interesting. But you will see it in various sentences. Okay. So you will already see that, well, that means it's a letter M. Okay, it's the letter M. Okay. Next one, please, is the Alemana, the German Alemana. Okay. Bold letters, very Gothic. Okay, very Gothic. Again, making it bold and Gothic makes it hard for you to distinguish the words. Okay. This is very much used for those writing in Latin. Okay. And you will see here that the 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 words are practically close to each other, but you have to understand the words like donaciones, donations. Okay. Okay, you will see the letters. Okay. Uh, for those of you can understand, you will see the letter P, the letter O, the R, the M, the A, the N, okay, the Z, okay, the D, okay, the D in razón de in the second line. Okay, this is an example of what we call the Alemana or the German way of writing. Very common in our church documents here in the Philippines. Okay. Okay. Continue, let us continue. And then the processal. Wow. This is something very common in the 18th, 19th, and 20th century. Okay, if you look at this, it's like the handwriting of a doctor. But again, you will see that that the letters are quite hard to understand because the word processal means it was actually used in the court, in courts or in government. because they have to write fast. It wants to dictation. So, so this is the kind of handwriting that people who are recording things should be able to write. Okay? And they sometimes are the only ones who could understand what these documents are saying. Okay. Thank you. Then other documents, okay, showing you in various stages of a state. This is a document showing you the Inspección General de Beneficencia y Sanidad de Filipinas. So it's a book from a hospital, talks about sanitation uh, and the benefits of good hygiene in the Philippines, written in 1897. Okay. So the various slides would show you how the writing would be used here. Okay, it was so everything was done by hand. Continue. Let us move on, please. So you will see there the documents as read. Well, I've always used this also to show two things: the way the book is, how the writing is placed here. Very, if you look at it closely, it will be easy to read. But the way the document is treated is bad because of the clip on the upper left-hand corner. Okay, very bad, okay, because it will destroy the document. Any archivist or librarian would squirm on seeing this, okay? Next one, please. Say it's still the same book, okay, same condition, but already you see the deterioration the sides of the book. So again, what if the deterioration spreads and the information here is lost? And that is why you will find it important that to make sure that for researchers like us, we are able to transcribe them and transfer them immediately. Okay. I see some, you see very common in documents would be ink scattered on the book. Okay. So the ink scattered. Okay, very common, not because they write well that they could actually keep their papers clean. But again, no, this happens. Okay. So the following slides, okay, would show you continuous other materials showing you how the continuous use of a particular ink and the kind of paper that you're using, how the information could be lost because of the ink. Like here, you will see the ink is so strong that it would go to the back, and so sometimes you lose the information at the back page. But again, the kind of ink used here was so common that even Jose Rizal used it. Okay, the ink gall, very high in mercury, okay, that burns through the paper. So if you want to learn more about that, I'll be very happy to show you what kinds of ink that were also used. Okay, this is part of the study of paleography as well. Okay, so anything that has to do with paper, we have to understand them. Okay, let us move on. Thank you. So abbreviations like this is an example of a document in the archives. Okay, showing you the abbreviations. Okay, abbreviations. So in Spanish, it's con el oficio de, V and E, and an X, and an A. Okay, so that underlined with red. So these would say vuestra, your, and then the following abbreviation would be excelencia, your excellency. Okay, you will see that also in the next in the next pages. So moving on, all of this would entail patience and study. Two very important traits that we must all have when we deal with documents, okay? And without these two, without patience, and as my old professor at UP would say, it's not constant practice makes perfect. He corrected us by saying, constant perfect practice makes perfect. Well, okay, in this sense, continuous study and understanding of this field would make it easier for you to understand the document. Okay. And the following are suggestions that I would like to leave with you, and that is, if you are going to this field, study a new handwriting carefully. Okay, get used to it. When you look at the record, look at the portions that are familiar to you. Okay, don't try to figure out everything at the first glance. Use the colophons or the surrounding text as guides for you to understand the document. Okay, learn learn and understand the various handwritings found in the records. Compare unknown letters with those on alphabet charts. Consult sources and don't spend too much time on a letter or name. If you try to figure out a sentence and you face a wall because you cannot understand the next word or two, then you are there for the next hour or two or so, or days or weeks. Then skip it, go to the next line, and then at the end, backtrack, and you'll be able to sit down and understand what could this word be as soon as you have everything and everything already understood. So don't spend too much time on it. Okay. And the next one, please. What I mean by a board, this is what I have exactly around me. Okay, I have it in front of me now on my table, and I check the various letters that I see. So when I look at old documents and I cannot understand the letter, then I look at this. Okay. Okay. If you want one, then please email me at the end. I'll be very happy to share with you my email. Okay. And okay, various sources are available. Okay. They're all in Spanish. Unfortunately, we haven't, this particular field is still very much or a lot more popular in Europe than in America maybe, or in Canada for that matter. Okay. But in our case, these materials will be very useful. Okay. The standardized orthography in Spanish that was established only in 1741. And other materials as follows. Okay, we can move on to that. Okay, other studies, other understanding of letters, so on. Okay, various styles, having a good paleographic guide to Spanish abbreviations is an important part of your, if ever you would like to start writing or to start understanding documents, you should have a guide to the various Spanish abbreviations. And then you have other materials on orthography. Okay, you will find them in your libraries. And let's move on, please. Okay, another book, okay, manual of paleographic manual on Spanish documents, manuscripts from the 12th to the 17th century. Okay, and next one, please, is the last one that I would like to leave with all of you. And I would like to thank you with this particular words from Marian Elena Bibliesca. Okay, and I like the way she expressed the study of paleography, okay, as as an officio, as a profession, okay, and that you are to read with calmness and attention to detail, avoiding anxiety or worry. Read each specific document word by word, avoiding the trap of confiding solely on your memory and knowledge of similar texts and phrases. Take into account all written elements, no matter how minimal they appear. Even the most insignificant mark may have transcendental importance. You should investigate what it means and why it was placed there. Long and difficult text, this is an important part, I think. And long and difficult text should be read several times until you have a complete transcription. Okay, so patience and study. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to my helper who I'll end here now. Okay, I'll end in that last piece. I will not include this. These are just examples that I have. Okay, but I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to thank you for my assistance in helping me show the slides here. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Chas, for sharing to
Thank you,
us this
Kristen.
very interesting topic in paleography. Given your topic, Sir Chas, we hope that we are able to promote awareness to our very own writing system used by Asian Filipinos. And with this kind of initiative, we're able to develop interest among the present generation to learn more about our history and culture, of course, using paleography. Let's now move on to the Q&A portion of our program. Again, if you have questions, please use the Slido as we are unable to monitor the question from our Facebook Live. Simply go to slido.com and enter the code 1323717. Again, that is slido.com, code 1323717. Okay, and to get the ball rolling, I think there are already questions posted by our participants. I will begin by mentioning the name of the participant if there's any, and followed by the question. So let me just view my Slido here. Okay, let's all welcome back and be put on the spotlight Dr. Francis Navarro for the Q&A portion. Sir, here's the first question. I
Mhm.
hope you're able to have a water break before we proceed. But
No,
yes, here's the first
I will
question, sir.
sacrifice my time for being late.
Okay. So here is it. Here it is, sir. Question number one. Is there a paleography course in the Philippines, or is there a crash course available? Again, is there a paleography course in the Philippines, or is there a crash course available?
Well, unfortunately, there is no course that offers it. It is a special course offered from time to time. For example, I know at UST, here at the Ateneo, once in a while, if they ask me to teach it, I will teach it. But I wouldn't say it was quite popular. But once in a while, the National Archives of the Philippines offer courses. The Instituto Cervantes de Manila offers courses. Okay, once in a while, and so unfortunately, it is not part of any particular field at the moment. In Europe, for example, it is offered in School of Library Sciences and Archival Studies. Okay, so it might be a good time to include this actually in these courses, you know, because you never know who might be interested in not just being an archivist or librarian, but also in deciphering documents.
Okay, sir. Thank you for your answer. We have another question here, sir, from Mark Joseph. What can you say on the present condition and prospective developments in preserving records and the accessibility of historical documents in the Philippines? Again, the question is, what can you say on the present condition and prospective developments in preserving records and the accessibility of historical documents in the Philippines?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. Well, there is now, how would I say it? Uh, uh, well, there is a need actually to improve our archives. Okay, and I know that, uh, for example, let me just use an example. Okay, as an archivist here at the Ateneo, we keep the records of the Ateneo from the time it started in 1859 to the present. Okay, we collect everything, okay, yeah. But people do not understand what we do here in the archives, okay? So they think that we're just cleaning paper, cleaning here and cleaning there, but they do not understand we're documenting, we're scanning, we're trying to keep the history of the school uh, uh, and then preserve them for future use, okay? So in the bigger archives, of course, where there are more collections, I think that we are improving. Okay, our services are improving, and I hope that the government, for that matter, would uh, a higher budget, no, for our archives, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. Okay, because remember, the archives is the soul of the nation. It's like the university archive is the soul of the university. Okay, so anyone interested in academic heritage would see that it is important that academic archives are also uh, supported because they keep the memory of the school alive. Okay. So, how can I further answer that question? There are now a higher level consciousness for the importance of archives. Uh, a few years ago, we assisted in training parish archivists in the province of Batangas. And there was a big need, no? Then we're talking about before the pandemic, and we're happy that little by little, okay, even the small parish archives are developing their own archives, their own ways of preserving, their own ways of conserving, and trying to keep their records safe and uh, and that aside from being safe, knowing that these records will last for another century or so, or maybe more than that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that, sir. And we have another question here from an anonymous. Would you
Anonymous.
recommend would you recommend studying Spanish for a better understanding of paleography? If so, up to what level should be studied? Again, would you recommend studying Spanish for a better understanding of paleography? If so, up to what level should be studied?
Well, uh, well, I was never a good Spanish student in college. I was a history major, but we were required Spanish until Spanish 172, techniques of translation. I never expected that one day I'll really be into this field, and then later on enter the field of archival studies because my interest only started when I entered the university and later on much when I started teaching. Okay, I fell in love with it. Okay. Uh, well, in the case of the Philippines, whether you are a historian, a student of history, an anthropologist, social scientist, or simply you're very interested, you have an avocation for history or for anything that deals with our past, having a knowledge of Spanish then is important. Okay. Well, uh, because it will help you read through the documents, at least read. Okay, because in this case, the reading knowledge of Spanish is important, followed by speaking. But if you can do both, good. Okay, because you'll be able to understand uh, what you are reading. Second, you'll be able to speak it, and then you can do much more than that. No, not just translate documents, but now uh, even do larger projects with your knowledge of the Spanish language. Okay, so it's not just a language for the what you call that, for the call centers. It's an academic language because uh, my friend at the Instituto Cervantes said that they are getting more students studying Spanish, but majority of them are working in this area. But you see, it starts with like that, no? Once you have a knowledge of Spanish, you'll find that you can use your new skill in this language by going into by looking into the documents. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. We have a supplement answer here for the question a while ago.
Uh,
NCCA offers technical assistance for archives
yeah.
conservation trainings. So,
That is,
and we
actually,
have a
that is
very
true. That is
oh,
true.
and we have a very curious question here from our participants. What was the most difficult Philippine document you encountered, Sir Chas?
Philippine document that I encountered and gave
Most
me
difficult po,
problems
sir. What
and
is
gave
the
me
most difficult?
problems. Well, it's no secret that my my involvement or our involvement in the first mass in the Philippines, by looking into the documents 500 years ago. Okay, we had to look for documents in Italy and in Spain about the Philippines. Okay, so uh, to figure out, for example, the issue of a very important question in Philippine history. Okay, so it took us a year looking for these documents, and as the translator and paleographer of the group, I had to make sure that the translation at least, or the document could transcribe would be easily understood also by those who understand the language. Okay. So that is what I would say the most difficult, because
Okay, sir. I think we're running out of time, so I will just give the last question.
yes.
Is there a paleography? Sorry. Can you name a book, fiction or non-fiction, that talks about the beginnings of paleographer or paleography?
Or paleography. Well, I'm looking at my collection now. There's a lot I can actually recommend. Okay, there's a lot uh, that I can recommend. But you see, a very simple. So the person is asking for source, right? A good source. Um, well, for a non-fiction, for how would I say it? For a book, a fictional book on paleography, I would say Umberto Eco's book on, well, on the name of the rose, because it starts with the issue of paleography and history. Okay, that's entertaining. But to a more serious study of paleography, I would say, uh, wait a minute, let me grab it and I'll show it to the person. Okay.
Okay. So let's just wait for Sir Chas to
Yes.
return.
I'm
Oh,
so sorry. I think it's better if I remove my. Okay, I think I'm sorry. Is that correct? Just a moment. Give me a moment, and I'll be able to show the material, because this person is asking basically what material. So I will recommend this Latin Paleography, Antiquity and the Middle Ages. This is a very good book by Bishop. So if you want to study paleography before Spanish, you should study this. And the other one is this one, Paleographic Guide to Spanish Abbreviations, 1500 to 1700. Okay. I'm so sorry. Did I actually show it? No. Did I?
yes,
Oh,
sir. We were able to
I
saw it
saw it.
po.
Okay.
And we
Yeah.
hope
Sorry.
the participant who asked the question was able to take a screenshot.
Yes. So I thought
Okay.
I pressed something wrong. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but there are
So
many more. So if they want to get in touch with me, I'll be very happy to send them more information.
okay. Thank you very much, sir. So for our other participants, if your questions were not answered, you will send them to Dr. Francis and the answer will be posted on our Facebook page. And to award the certificate of appreciation, may I call our president, Miss Denise Marie Betia, and let me read the content of the certificate. Society of Filipino Archivists Certificate of Appreciation. We wish to express our deepest appreciation to Dr. Francis Navarro for sharing his time, knowledge, and expertise during the webinar SFA Lecture Series Deciphering the Past, An Introduction to Paleography, held on 16th of August 2024 via Facebook Live, given the 16th day of August 2024. Signed, Miss Denise Marie Betia, President, SFA.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
And I hope
Once
everyone
Thank you,
again, we
can hear
thank you,
me.
uh,
Dr. Francis, and our dear participants for being with us today. And that's the end of our second session for the SFA lecture series. And we hope to see you again next week for our third session, From Chaos to Order, Building a Successful Municipal Records Management Program and Archiving as Experienced by the Municipal of Lugait in Misamis Oriental on August 23, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. with Mr. Cedric Daita as our speaker. Once again, thank you very much po, Dr. Francis, and to our dear participants. Maraming salamat po and see you again.
Thank you very much, Cedric. Thank you very much, Denise. Thank you. Bye.
yan po. Naka-stop na po tayo sa live.
Thank you. First of all,
You.
okay. It's my fault. It's totally my fault today.
Okay lang.
I know I
Congrats
gave
po,
you all,
sir.
no, I gave you all the
Congrats for,
spirit. Okay.
congrats po sa ano, sa inyong lecture. So, sige po, magkita po tayo next week.
Next week, yes. Okay.
For the session naman of Sir Cedric. So, kaya lang holiday, pero tuloy pa rin natin kasi ano pa rin naman, the other people are tawag ito, pwede naman nilang balikan sa Facebook if in case na hindi sila maka-join on the day itself. Pero yun, kung ano, pwede nilang balikan naman. Ayun po. Kasi mahirap na mag-book.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pwede ba tayo mag-picture ng isa lang?
Yes.
Para
Yes.
sa documentation with the GSIS.
Thank you very much, Mac. Thank you very much.
Mark po yan. Ay, bago gupit si Mamshi. Picturean tayo. Tantan, ikaw na mag-screenshot.
Si Karina pala andyan. Ma'am Brades, andyan pala.
Nasa sasakyan ako, nasa labas ako.
Miss Tess, Ma'am Tessie.
Thank you
Ay,
very
nako.
much po. Miss, mauna na po ako mag-out. Kasi po...
Nag-screenshot ka na? Nag-picture ka na?
Ay, hindi pa, miss. Ako pala mag-screenshot.
Oo, ikaw.
Yes.
Eh, nakamute ka, girl.
Miss, hindi po buo sa akin yung screen.
Ay,
Hindi po
sige,
kita
ako na
lahat.
lang. Ay, Jerome, ikaw na lang, please.
Okay po.
One, two. One more. One, two. Last na. Wacky.
Walking.
Okay na po. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
po.
you very
Po,
Bye
much.
see you
po.
next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.